Ladies and gents, my name is Xander, aka Deislayers, and in this video, we're going to discuss how to use bows. So a couple videos ago, I did a god roll video on pretty much every single weapon that you guys could possibly imagine, but the one thing that I left out, at least for a primary weapon, was bows. And the reason for that is because I was waiting to discuss that in this particular video. And so for all you guys right there on screen, Nuraku, Mark, Snowblind Otter, George, Isaac, and Rick, this one is for you guys. And so not only are we going to discuss the best perks, aka god rolls, that you guys should be looking for on bows, but on top of this, we're even going to analyze exactly how to use the weapon, some tips and tricks on how to get the best optimal TTK possible, and lastly, their strengths and weaknesses, so that you guys really understand exactly all the environments and situations that you guys need to be using them in. The only thing left to do is to eviscerate that notification button, and let's jump right into the video. There is no doubt in my mind that bows can be a ton of fun, and man do they absolutely annihilate guardians, but in order for them to do so, you've got to be able to know exactly what kind of perks are going to be utilized in the weapon, and on top of this, you've got to know what weapon to pair it with, because if you don't know those two things, then bows are going to be complete muff cabbage garbage, and you're never ever going to touch them. This brings me to my very first point, and that is that with bows, you're either going to use the bow solely, or you're going to pair it with something by getting that first shot with the bow, and then utilizing a hand cannon or a sidearm or an SMG to finish off that guardian. If you were to ask me, I would highly recommend that you use some kind of hand cannon, and in particular, a 110 rate of fire hand cannon, because those things have phenomenal range, and they can do up to 91 points of damage in the head, and so as you guys can tell, with the bow doing approximately 130 all the way up to 150 points of damage, that type of hand cannon is going to pair with it beautifully. Throughout this entire video, that's exactly what you guys are going to see, as either one, I'm using the bow and the bow alone to get almost every single kill, or I'm using the bow to then complement with my hand cannon, and in this case, it's going to be the Duke MK44. Understanding the two types of playstyles in which bows are meant to be utilized in, the very next thing that we have to understand is exactly what perks are going to be the most effective for both of those playstyles that I just mentioned. In general, you're always looking for perks like Snapshot, Explosive Head, Quick Draw, Archer's Tempo, and Rampage. And the reason why that is because a lot of those perks have some marvelous symbiotic relationships, and I'm going to mention all those in just a second. But some of the perks that you're not looking for is Hipfire Grip and Dragonfly. The main reasons as to why you're not looking for Hipfire Grip nor Dragonfly is because Hipfire Grip is not going to be effective in the sense that a lot of us are going to be aiming down sights almost 24/7. And if that's the case, then Hipfire Grip is going to be tossed out the window and we're never ever going to use it. And the same principles can also apply for Dragonfly, and the reason why that is because even though we're trying to get a lot of precision headshots, we're not trying to do a lot of radial damage, but rather, we're trying to get the bow drawn back even faster so that we can fire our next shot. If this isn't the case, then most likely what we're trying to do is swap to our secondary weapon, aka a hand cannon, and that's why we want to look for perks like Quick Draw, because in this case, that's exactly what you want to have, and this is precisely what I'm doing with my Subtle Calamity. Before I show you guys that exact roll on my Subtle Calamity, what I want to mention here is that if you're going to be utilizing that hand cannon and bow combination, then what you want to look for is something like Quick Draw along with Snapshot, because if that's the case, you're going to be able to have that perfect symbiotic relationship to be able to use the bow, swap to the hand cannon, go back to the bow, swap to the hand cannon, and so on and so forth. The cycle is going to repeat. Now, if you want to be able to use the bow and the bow alone, then what you're looking for is something to increase the draw time, and exactly what that perk is Archer's Tempo. Archer's Tempo is going to allow you to decrease your draw time after your first precision hit. And the beautiful thing about this is that that's exactly what you want to have if you want to use the bow and the bow alone. Something that's going to correlate with this beautifully is Rampage, and so with that, you guys can already tell that we're going to decrease our draw time and thus increase our damage output after every single kill, and thus the cycle is going to continue, allowing us to do massive amounts of damage with that phenomenal draw time at approximately half a second. The good news for all of us is that there is an energy bow that has exactly this kind of roll, and it comes static every single time. The only two things that are different are the perks on the left. But nevertheless, you're always going to have Archer's Tempo and you're always going to have Rampage on the weapon called the Arsenic Bite 4B. In association with this, you're also going to have another static bow, but in this case it's in the kinetic slot and it's called the No Turning Back. To be honest with you, this no turning back is complete shenanigans, and I would highly recommend that you guys never use this thing because those types of perks are not meant for a PvP environment. But what could be used for a PvP environment is a Subtle Calamity, as this is another energy bow that can have random rolls. And as you guys can tell, this one right here has quick draw along with explosive head. The reason as to why I love this type of roll is because this thing right here is going to be phenomenal for pairing with that Duke 44 that I just mentioned from earlier, and when I use it in this kind of combination sense, then quick draw is going to allow me to swap back and forth very quickly, while at the exact same time explosive head is then going to flinch the enemy guardian. This is then going to give me enough time to swap back to my hand cannon, finish them off, then swap directly back to the bow and repeat the process all over again. After seeing all these kinds of rolls, you guys can really tell that the Arsenic Bite 4B is static, but it's got probably the best god roll that you could possibly think of because Archer's Tempo and Rampage is going to be designed to use the bow and the bow alone, allowing you to get critical headshot after critical headshot, and that is going to make so many Guardians a little bit salty. As far as the Subtle Calamity goes, that thing is going to be just as powerful as that of the Arsenic Bite 4B because it can have random rolls. And for this one reason, not only can it potentially have the exact same roll as the Arsenic Bite 4B, doing more damage output on that first shot, but it can also be utilized with random rolls to give it something that's going to correlate beautifully with a hand cannon. And if you were to ask me, the Subtle Calamity can then be utilized in a wide variety of playstyles, fitting you and your particular playstyle the best. Now that you guys kind of understand the best playstyles as well as the best perks to look for on bows, the very next thing I want to discuss is my first tip, and that's to fully grasp and comprehend drawback time and ADS time awareness. So what exactly do I mean by these two things and how do they correlate together? First things first, and that's to understand drawback time. And precisely what this is the amount of time that it takes for you to pull back the bow entirely so that whenever you release the arrow, it's then going to have a linear line of sight and thus also have the most damage output that it can possibly do. As far as ADS time and the awareness associated with it, pretty much what that is just being able to aim down the sight, but to when you should actually do all these things together is based upon one thing and one thing only, and that's map awareness along with timing. To get a better comprehension of exactly what I mean by these things is to show you guys an example. And so right here you guys can see I'm in a 1v1 engagement. What I want you to analyze and notice first is that I have my best map awareness because I know that there's somebody on my radar. And as soon as I happen to see that, I'm going to draw back the bow. Nevertheless, I still have that drawback time all the way up, so then all I gotta do is just simply aim down my sights, aka ADS time, and then be able to land that first shot directly in the head. As you guys just saw, that's exactly what I did right there. And so the reason why I was able to do this is because my map awareness was so superb that I was then able to get that second shot in almost half a second flat. And so in this respect, bows can have one of the best optimal time to kills that you can possibly ask for in this entire game. However, the only way that this is going to work is if you have number 1, map awareness, draw back your bow to anticipate where guardians are coming from, then aim down sights, and then finally land your first shot to then proc the second perk called Archer's Tempo, land your second shot, and thus the enemy is going to be eradicated, decimated, and truly obliterated every single time. The main thing that I want to point out is that you've got to be able to have this overall comprehension and map awareness of when this drawback time then is going to correlate with the ADS time, and that's because you've got to be able to know when to actually aim down your sights. If you're aiming down your sights far too long, then that means that you're never going to have enough peripheral vision, aka map awareness or radar awareness, to then allow you to then go from one guardian to the next. An extremely good rule of thumb is to never aim down sights for more than 2 seconds. If you're doing so, then by that time, someone's probably going to flank you, and so the best way to overcome this is to do what I said from before, have very good drawback time, then ADS, and then be able to land your first shot, followed by the second shot, and before you know it, the enemy guardian is going to be emancipated from their ghost. As soon as you guys get the hang of this drawback time and ADS time awareness, the very next thing that you're going to work on is my second tip, and that's duck and cover shot rhythm. Once again, you're probably asking yourself, alright Xander, so what exactly do you mean by this? As many of you already know, I'm a huge fanatic of shot rhythm, and it doesn't matter what kind of weapon that you're using, as it can be a sidearm, it can be a hand cannon, it can be a pulse rifle, as any weapon in this game always has a shot rhythm. And if you can master that shot rhythm, you're going to be able to land more of your critical headshots and list down guardians extremely fast. With bows, this is even more emphasized, because if you happen to miss a shot, you're going to be penalized severely and most likely end up dead. So to prevent this from ever happening to you, what you have to understand is this shot rhythm that I'm talking about on bows in particular. As in the previous tip, the best way to analyze this is to show you guys an example. And so as you guys can see right here, I'm on Bannerfall and in the lane where it's a very high traffic area, but there happens to be a guardian above and below the balcony. And this still image, I've already got the bow drawn entirely so I can have the maximum damage output possible, as well as having the ADS time already finished. And so the reason that I point this out is because as soon as I take this shot, I'm then going to try and duck behind this pillar, draw back the bow again, go for the next shot, go to the right hand side of the pillar again, draw back the next shot, and then go to the left of the pillar and do the process all over again. And so the main thing that I want you to take away from that particular situation is I used my environment to my advantage, but more importantly is I understood the bow's shot rhythm, knowing that I was only able to do a little bit of damage here and there, get behind the cover, draw back the time, and then show my face once again, so then I was actually able to down the guardian, no problem whatsoever. In almost every single one of my engagements, I'm doing this over and over again. And so what this is allowing me to do is to make sure that I'm doing the maximum damage output in the little bit of time that I'm showing my face. The beautiful thing about bows is that they have a very high damage output in a little bit of time that you're actually showing your entire body or your head or whatever it might be. And so as long as you guys are applying this duck and cover mentality along with understanding the bow's shot rhythm, you're going to have just as much of an effective overall ratio as what I'm doing and get insane astronomical efficiencies almost after every single game. Now I realize that a lot of us are not always going to be in cover, and most of the time we could potentially be in the open. And if this is the scenario, then what I would highly recommend is that you guys understand the weapon's shot rhythm and then strafe to that shot rhythm, because that timing that you can do from side to side lateral movement, along with being able to draw back the bow efficiently, is then going to give you an overall efficiency that can land critical headshot after critical headshot. And with bows, all it needs is 2 taps, and you can kiss the enemy guardian. Adios, bye-bye. After hearing all this information, I think that you guys now have a very solid and thorough comprehension of how you guys are going to be able to use bows effectively in PvP. If you can master a weapon's drawback time and ADS time along with the awareness associated with it to utilize it effectively, then that's then going to lead to many critical headshots. If you happen to be in cover, then you can use the duck and cover shot rhythm mentality that I was mentioning from earlier, and when you combine those 2 tips together, I guarantee you that guardians are going to be like, what the heck just hit me, and I can't believe that I just died that freaking fast in half a second flat. When you correlate this with the particular playstyle that's going to fit you the best, as well as the perks that are going to be on that particular bow, you're going to be able to use them in a wide variety of playstyles, as well as a wide variety of environments, making them effective in almost every single engagement that you can possibly think of. The only other thing that I want to mention about bows is that these things can not only be utilized on the ground, but they can also be utilized in the air. And if you can incorporate verticality into the use of bows as well, you're going to be catching so many guardians off guard, making you so much more unpredictable. However, bows cannot be utilized in a sliding mentality, and that's because as soon as you do so, the drawback time that we were discussing from earlier via your radar and your map awareness is going to become undrawn. And so with that, you're a little bit limited into the ways in which you can use the bows. Despite this one deficit, bows are by all means one of the best weapons for team shotting. And as we all know, Destiny 2 is still a very reliant game on team shotting. And so regardless of whichever kind of engagement that you guys happen to be in, whether it's competitive or quick play, bows are still going to be just as effective in both environments. I will warn all of you, do not take these into competitive unless you have mastered everything that I'm talking about. Because like I said from before, bows are high risk and high reward weapons. And so if you happen to miss one shot, you're going to get penalized drastically, cost your enemy team a life, and in this sense, that's no good for anybody. Having said that, I would still highly recommend that you guys use a bow all by itself or a bow and a hand cannon combination, because I'm not going to lie, it's an absolute blast and you're going to be downing so many guardians, making it seem as if you're the Green Arrow, or my personal favorite, Robin Hood, with all those spectacular, phenomenal, and absolutely insane crispy headshots, Destiny style. Lastly, go ahead and check out some of my other new videos, as you guys can see right there on the screen. If you happen to enjoy this one, then you're definitely going to enjoy this as well. That's pretty much all I've got for you as of right now, and so as always, Deislayers, great gaming, until next time.